In news that will likely be shocking to no one, mainstream major news publications in the U.S. took tons of money to publish Chinese propaganda. Now, what is kind of silly about the whole thing is that China violated a disclosure law in order to publish the propaganda. So good job, New York Times and Washington Post. While China is doing horrific things to people and selling their organs, you're taking millions of dollars to run their advertisements. And many of these advertisements actually look like articles. Welcome to the world of media. Look, this has been a problem for a long time. And what I find funny is that this kind of stuff was being called out by gamers during Gamergate. Now, whatever your opinion is on Gamergate, I don't care about the whole argument, whatever. There were certainly people on the Gamergate side who were concerned that gaming companies were sponsoring the news sites that were then writing about those companies. Certainly that's a conflict of interest. Well, what do you think happens when China pops along and says, we got $1 million for you to run this story? And the New York Times and the Washington Post say, hey man, we need $1 million. They take that money, and then all of a sudden those stories disappear. The stories about what China's doing. Now, of course, the New York Times, Washington Post, and others have reported on China, but you got to be careful here, right? I'll tell you what goes on. I talked about this like a couple weeks ago, but I'll tell you this. Let's say a journalist working for a company like the Washington Post finds out that Star Wars is planning to end the Yoda character. Like they're gonna retcon him and wipe him out completely. And so they say, whoa, this is huge. And it'll cause a huge fan backlash if they report the story. All of a sudden, that news outlet, Washington Post, gets a call. See, the journalist will contact Disney or whatever and say, are you really planning on getting rid of Yoda? And then they say, yes. But then all of a sudden, the company calls WAPO and says, we want to do a big ad buy with you guys. Oh, but that story you're going to run? That's a conflict of interest. So then the Washington Post goes to the reporter and says, don't run the negative story on Disney. Then all of a sudden, there's $1 million ad buy for Star Wars toys. That's how the game is played. I'm not going to act like, the New York Times is going to completely omit some of this news. You can't escape it. But let me show you what they've done. This is kind of creepy. The Free Beacon reports China routinely broke federal law by not disclosing how much it spent to publish regime propaganda in the New York Times, the Washington Post, and other newspapers. An expert review of foreign agent registration filings concluded. China Daily, an official mouthpiece of the Chinese Communist Party, has published hundreds of propaganda articles designed to look like ordinary news in some of America's most influential newspapers. While foreign agents may place ads in the United States, the propaganda outlet has repeatedly violated the Foreign Agent Registration Act by failing to provide full disclosures about its purchases. China Daily has published propaganda in mainstream outlets for decades, but did not disclose its purchases of space in American newspapers to the Department of Justice until 2012. Even after it began acknowledging its relationship with the papers, the regime mouthpiece continued to violate federal disclosure requirements. China Daily has failed to provide breakdowns of spending activities and withheld copies of online ads, among other omissions that violate federal law, according to experts who reviewed years of its FARA filings. Now, I'm going to stop you real quick. Doesn't some of that responsibility fall on, the New York Times and the Washington Post? I get it. China Daily has to file those things. But shouldn't the New York Times and the Washington Post not be taking millions of dollars from China? Can we then trust their reporting on China? I'm going to go ahead and say the answer is no. That's a big challenge, man, because you need money to do news. And advertisers will pull out if you write bad things about them. Now, I'll let you in on a big secret. You see, people try to claim that there's always some kind of bias or behind a person. No. Let me tell you something. They claim that I only say the opinions I say because I'm funded by the right or whatever. No, not really. These are just my opinions. And sometimes I say things people don't like. And the reality is, I've been sitting here talking on YouTube for a while, and people started gathering around what I was already saying. I didn't go find a crowd and then start yelling to them, right? They built around what I do. And plus, I'm in a weird position, you know what I mean? I get it. The left hates the fact that I'm a lefty who rags on them. But the reality is, the people who donate to me, I gotta be honest, I don't know all of their opinions, and there's no way I could plan pandering. So I'll tell you this. Is there an issue with taking money from an individual who may be biased? There is. But what's better? You got government-funded news. Well, the government's got a big centralized agenda. You take that with a grain of salt. You got corporate-funded news. The advertiser's got a big agenda. Take it with a grain of salt. And you've got grassroots-funded news and commentary. And I'll tell you what, with my funding coming from people who choose to donate, that gives me substantially more freedom to say whatever I want. Because I'll tell you what, man, you know, with the, I think I have like a few thousand people who donate to me every month. You guys are awesome. I love you all so much, helping me do this work. But one person might think, you know, someone might say chocolate ice cream is, I'm gonna use hypothetical here. They'll be like, you know, Tim's pretty reasonable on X. And then another person might think Tim's pretty reasonable on Y. And then I do a video and one of those people might say, you've gone too far, you know, X is better. And then they just cancel. And I get these messages, people saying to me like, I can't believe you said that about this, that, and this, I'm canceling. I didn't know you were gonna cancel when I said that. So yeah, I can't control it. The same is true for Ruben and Peterson and everyone else at the Patreon. Dude, I don't know. Like, you know what, man, I have no problem saying I think Trump's got a bad behavior, and I think the most sane and reasonable position is to be like, the economy's stupid, people like that, but I'm not a fan of the guy. Am I worried that Trump supporters are gonna freak out and stop giving money? I don't know. I don't know what would make them angry. I made a video called Diversity is a Strength and Tucker Carlson is Wrong and explained what he was getting wrong. I don't know if I lost money because of that. I can't track that. People who can't, like on Patreon, they try to make it so you can. Anyway, the point is, when you look to what the New York Times and Wall Street Journal and Washington Post and all that, Wall Street Journal is pretty good. I think we can see here that they've taken, a second highest, so never mind, so not that great. I do like the Wall Street Journal's reporting, but they are funded by readers. And so there is a pitfall here. The New York Times bends over backwards to please their leftist base. That to me is shocking. I would have no problem, absolutely no problem, smack talking, you know, a Republican if a Republican did something on par with like, you know, what the left is doing with impeachment. So here's the thing, right? I've criticized Mitch McConnell over holding up, I think it was Merrick Garland, was that who it was? Obama's appointee. Because you can't argue that Trump is president and you got to let him do his thing. And, you know, then during Obama's term, the argument is basically the Senate and the executive branch were split, so an election will clear things up. No, I don't care. I don't care for that, dude. I disagree. I get the argument. Nah, Obama was president. Obama gets to a point. Trump is president. Trump gets to a point. Play the game straight. I got no problem pointing that out. The thing is, the Republicans aren't doing a whole lot like that right now. Trump, his policies are working. I don't want to turn this into a Trump thing. I want to turn this into a news thing taking propaganda from China. The point is, these news outlets are systems, not individuals. When the New York Times says to their staff, you're all leftists now because that's who's paying the bills, that's shocking. When Tim Pool has an opinion, that's just Tim Pool's opinion. You know what I mean? Now everyone's going to make fun of me for talking in the third person. I was making a point. When I say, like, here's how I feel, it's literally how I feel. I don't have a planning meeting where I'm like, let's see, here's what I should feel like tomorrow. No, I read the news and I'm like, oh, harumph, I say. And then I make a video where I shout harumph over and over again. And if people like it, they watch. You look at some of my videos and you can see they don't do that well. You know, it's really frustrating because, like, I've done several videos on UFOs. Well, I felt like talking about UFOs. And guess what? They don't do well. And I know it. You know, I don't care. But you look at what these companies do. Wall Street Journal, oh, whoa, let me stop here. China Daily has placed most of their ads in the Wall Street Journal. Shame on you. That breaks my heart. The Wall Street Journal and the Financial Times are the only papers that I actually pay for right now. I canceled NYT and WAPO because I think they're awful. But we can see this. Okay, so that's China Daily has placed over 700 online ads, mostly with the Wall Street Journal. Oh, that's online, I see. China Daily has placed over 500 ads with over 4 outlets, and these are physical, I believe, total pages. The Washington Post is funded by China. How about that? They say a spokesman for the Post told the Free Beacon that the newspaper has run China Daily ads for more than 30 years. By 2012, the regime mouthpieces operation was running dozens of ads per year, mimicking real articles. That's the line. Check this out. Look at these. These advertisements are news articles. They're being paid to run straight up propaganda. You know, it's really funny. And the Chinese propaganda has come to YouTube. People were being paid. I don't know how many people did it to run a video criticizing the Falun Gong movement. There was like an art show in New York. So yeah, you got to watch out for this stuff, man. I don't think it's appropriate to do this. But free money, right? Free money. There's a big question, you know, that I've had with many others. Like, what if an oil tycoon came to you? Like, how would you guys feel? Comment below. How would you feel if an oil tycoon came to me and said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write you a check for $30 million. $30 million, and you can run a news organization exactly as you see fit. But we're not going to tell you what to report on. You can report on us. So if I had free reign and an oil tycoon was offering money, is it appropriate to take? I think the answer is no. The answer is no, because just the perception of a conflict of interest is bad. I want people to know that if I'm going to report on the oil industry, it's going to be fair and legit. So I prefer grassroots fundraising, more of a nonprofit model, but it's kind of Subverse, for instance, is a for-profit. Pay what you will, you subscribe, you donate. Same with my content. They're different entities, but the general idea is I would rather be funded by readers and avoid a lot of those pitfalls by taking money. If we as news producers, so I'll put it this way. I've taken sponsorship from, say, like Virtual Shield, who I think they're really awesome. They've supported me. So I would purposefully try to avoid reporting on a lot of these kinds of systems, specifically because it's a conflict of interest. If I felt like I had information that was, important enough, I'd still report on it, but I think you got to avoid that stuff. I can't trust these papers reporting on China because they're taking all this money. So, what do? Is it right or wrong? Like if China came to me right now and said they'll pay me $10 million to run one story, just one. And then from then on out, I could report whatever I wanted, even if it was negative. Is it worth it? That's a big struggle. It's a big challenge, compromising your values for one time. You know what I think the problem is? You can't do it. You know why? You can't take the money because it's a slippery slope of, I'll just do this one thing right now, and then later I'll do the right thing. But every day you're striving to do the right thing. If every day you're thinking you'll eventually do the right thing, you never will. The ends don't justify the means. I would not take the money from China or any of these, or any special interests. It depends entirely on my principles. Like if, a solar panel company hit me up and they said they wanted to give me a bunch of money, I'd be totally down with that. I think solar power is great. You know what I mean? I'm not, when it comes to the oil companies, I'm actually not as anti-screechy as a lot of the lefties are. I wouldn't do it though. And I think the challenge, even with the solar panel thing, idea is like, as much as I like solar panels, would that present a conflict of interest if I had to report on corruption within a solar panel company? Those are the challenges. You can't turn away all advertisement just because you're concerned that one day you might have to report on it. But I personally wouldn't take money from something that I thought I might have a conflict with. I'll leave it there. You let me know what you think about China and these ads, because I think the bigger problem is that they look like articles. Make them real advertisements and say advertisement big and bold. I'll leave it there. Stick around. A couple more segments coming up in a few minutes, and I will see you all shortly.